In this lesson, we'll learn how to draw a site plan in AutoCAD using a raster image reference. Now, that image reference is what we looked at in the last lesson when we were looking at our site plans. And to import that into AutoCAD, all you need to do is to go to Insert and then Raster Image Reference. Underneath your project files, you'll find the Referenced Files folder, and there you can find your sitemap 01. And then just leave everything as is by default, click on OK, and then just scale it anyhow in your scene, and then double middle mouse button click to zoom extents. Now, the first thing I like to do with these imported images is to double click on the outside border and then just fade it out to about 50 to 70% here, so that we have a darker image that we can now draw on top of, and we can see our lines. Next thing, let's go and add some layers into our drawing. So let's start by adding a underlay layer, a site layer that we will use for the outline of the barge, and then a context layer that we will use for everything else. Now we can go and give everything custom colors. We can create a blue for the context, let's say a green for the site, and a gray or white for that underlay image. Next, I'm going to make the site my current layer, and I'm going to relayer the underlay to that underlayer layer. So now what I need to do is to scale up this image so that it is at the right scale in my drawing. Now I just want to mention here that it's a good idea to check your units before you start drawing anything. Mine is set to millimeters because of the area where I'm in. If you are using feet or inches or anything else, then obviously set that up to the according size. Since my scale bar is in meters, I'm going to draw the site at the right size and then scale it up in my drawing. First thing I'd like to do though, before I scale anything, is just to rotate my site so that I have a horizontal rotation. So I drew the first line matching the angle of the site, and now the second reference line is going to be the one that I'm going to rotate it to. So let's go and rotate. So you just need to type RO and select your background image and your reference line. Right click, choose your base point, type in R for reference, enter again, then your base point, your reference line, and then your horizontal line. So that has now rotated everything. Next thing we need to do is draw the site. So we're going to draw this site more or less tracing the image. And then we know that the site needs to be roughly 50 by 150 meters. But I'm going to scale it up using this scale bar first. So I'm going to draw a line from here to there. And we know now that this line should be 50 meters. At the moment, if I type in DI and I measure it, it is only 62. So we need to basically scale this up to be slightly smaller so that it is at 50. So I'm now going to draw a circle from that original base point, and I'm going to type in 50,000 for meters. And that should be 50 meters. So my image is slightly too big. So now let's scale this down. So SC enter. You just need to select everything that needs to be scaled down besides your reference circle. Right click, choose your base point again, reference just like we did with the rotation, and then we scale that down. So if any of these scaling and rotating issues are in a problem, you can have a look at simpler courses that do explain how all of these functions work. I'm going to focus mainly on the workflow so that I don't spend too much time on the simple AutoCAD steps that I'm sure that by now you already know. So now, just to repeat, our image is at the right scale, so I can now delete these references, and I can also double check to see the size. This right now is 146. So let's just go and redraw this site by typing REC enter, and let's manually go and type in the dimensions. So here we have dimensions, D enter. We know we need 150 by 50, and now our site is exactly the right size. I'm going to move this into place, and once we have the site done, we can go to our context layer and then start drawing out our context. So I'm going to be using polylines, and we can just start to very quickly roughly draw the border of the river. Now, how much time you want to spend on this and how accurately you want to do it is absolutely up to you. I'm going to do it in a very simple way because I want to keep my workflow as fast as possible. I want to basically pretend that we only have 1 or 2 days for this type of project. Perhaps it is a competition entry that you're doing and you only have time after hours. Perhaps it is a rush project in an office, or you just don't want to spend too much time on all of these details. So this whole project, or the whole course, will be to show you how to do a project as quickly as possible. Now, a couple of the main features that you want to include in your site plan are going to be your bridges, since that is going to be a point of reference. So let's just draw in our bridges here. And again, I'm doing it extremely roughly. And I'm not going to be worried about any of the other roads. All I'm looking at is the physical bridge element that I'm going to model up and have crossing the river. And then lastly, let's just draw a rectangle over the entire museum. So that is roughly this entire block. And then we know that we have these 2 towers that line up more or less with our building. So these towers are positioned round about here. And I'm just going to copy that tower to the second position. So the site as well, we can move it slightly. We can also do this in 3D later, but I just want to get the sites to line up as closely as possible with these 2 towers that are in these 2 positions. So that's pretty much it for the site plan. You can obviously add in as much detail as you want. Let's just turn off the underlay, and you'll see that this is the bare bones, the absolute minimum that you need to do just to start modeling your site in 3D Max. So if I turn on the underlay again, you can also decide how big you want your site model to be. You can already go and input your extremities of the site. So this would be a base that you would build your site onto. So let's say ours is going to be roughly about this big. So once I turn off my underlay, I'm going to basically create a mesh of that size, cut a river through it, put 2 bridges over it, build this building, and then build my barge. And that's exactly what we're going to do in the next lesson. We're going to import this plan in, and we're going to do that modeling so that we can start our design work on this floating platform.